And we got a good connection too.
What day was that?
August the 5th.
It's a second situation.
Yeah, right now. Me? Peter did that. Let's make it up.
Oh, that's real good. A lot of finance stuff.
Yes, and they got to put the COVID-19 money there.
Very foreign.
We had a lot of fun.
It's late night on the Jim.
When's the next, plan? Who's supposed to come to the next one? Next Tuesday, right?
Steve.
No, it's still this month. We'll do the rest of one. Board of Supervisors, 6 P.M. on 25th. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
How do you just think?
Yeah.
Bruce, if we have our iPad on, oh, never mind, I know the question, I know the answer.
I like that. I like those questions.
Yes, still.
I think it's, yeah. Okay, it's not. She's doing
Go
it.
ahead.
Or remote.
That's what everybody said. For that? Help.
It's fine.
Please do not. Should I go see him or the meeting, sir?
He does. That's what I'm trying to go on. Going to get that. I said, well, we're gonna get how much just to get.
He never covers special. Okay.
Yeah, this is not what I. Well, thank you.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but that's what we recommend. Within 2 weeks.
I know that's too.
It's based on your receipts.
I think we can do that. Another accomplishing it is a letter, 2 pages.
We'll see.
A lot of seeing.
Or the 2 paragraphs, and however you want to define it. So there is something that is read, but I think that's appropriate. I mean, it's just a matter of striking the balance.
Well, if it was some, just in the meeting, it's just one letter, whatever. it would be.
And that's kind of the thing to me. About reading.
So you.
Problem. The idea is everybody goes to hear everybody else. The other reason I think it makes it easier to read them first is some people decide, well, I've already covered what I was going to say, so I don't need to stand up and say anything. But, you know, we also,
Not gonna make everybody happy.
that's right.
All right. Very well, you. How are you doing, Dave? What's on the front of your truck?
Thanks, sure.
I do.
What do you want me to put down?
Something, yeah, harvest related.
If we all approve.
Just to beat Bayou to the punch, in 7C, should be TS rather than CE at the end of residence.
Residents,
Should I suggest that it be property owners instead?
You run into some equal protection arguments. If they have to be a property owner, that's how the South got in trouble with their poll taxes. It used to be you had to be a landowner. So we've got a, yeah, there's some case law on it.
That was a hard solution.
I understand the logic of it,
Yes.
you know, but the idea is every citizen has a voice. And they would be, you know, that's an interesting question. But if they're non-residents and non-property owners, I think though that if they were a property owner, that they would need to say that. But somebody who's renting property in Madison County should have, it's the, I mean, constitutionally, that's the law. They would be residents. Or you could put residents or property owners. That would cover both.
Yeah.
Although y'all didn't like hearing from all of my friends in Orange County. This is how emotional that is. But this is how contentious that issue was in Orange. My wife, who wasn't, I obviously was at, she was at the Food Lion 2 days later. 3 people snubbed her. And I don't vote. I mean, it's curious how that works.
I mean, they're not, the market is relevant. You think that's right?
You know, it's interesting, and most of those people supported the market. That's the interesting part.
Actually, much narrower than what they actually doing now.
Oh, it growing? I think you're right. I think that's absolutely right. And I have a lot of sympathy for the Harveys. I mean, I live about 4 miles away as the crow flies from Growling. And last summer, I could hear the map, but I could hear in the back. I knew there was a band somewhere in the area. But the next door neighbors to the place are just, and they wrote letters to Harveys, and they're nice folks. I mean, very civic minded, and you know, it has ruined their enjoyment of their property. And I'm simply, you know, but it's. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, that's dangerous now. I won't. Karen and I have talked,
Livingston, how are you?
we won't because we were going and the traffic was bad.
How are you all? Talk to Larry. This one.
It is.
Let's go outside.
There you go.
We'll just go outside.
Yep, there you go. Livingston keeps us all up and up. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Call this meeting to order. We do have everybody is present tonight. We do have a quorum. Everybody is attending virtually. And the members of the room at this time.
Benny, she can get a mask. She'll be back. Let's in.
Right. I would like to make one suggestion. Everybody got a copy of the agenda. It is quite lengthy. However, if we do not get at least through all of this, which I doubt that we will, we can continue it at our workshop meeting on the September, whatever date that is. We're not going to have another marathon session tonight. Everybody had enough of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to add 2 items to the agenda.
Okay. All right. Microphones are not working.
Microphone's on, I was sure. This one.
Is this one working?
Push the green button.
I did. Is this working?
I think so.
Try it out, Mike, you hear?
No, one of those over there doesn't work. Try the other one.
Hello?
You can always hear me.
Can you hear me?
That one's bad. It's bad.
Hello?
Okay. We need to approve the agenda for tonight. I have one suggestion that we have somebody that was at the August 5th boss meeting, give us an update on that. And Francois, you had a suggestion for an addition?
Yes, I have an addition to the piece of bylaw changes.
Well, can you wait until we get to
Yes,
that?
but I have 2 more items that I'd like to put on the agenda so that they would be addressed, not necessarily today. But, so they could be at item 11 and 12.
And what's the subject?
One is access to the internet.
Okay.
And the other one is electronics recycling.
It's what?
Electronics recycling.
All right, don't know what that is, but we'll see. All right, everybody's heard the proposed amendments to the agenda? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous, thank you very much. Okay. First thing on the agenda is review the minutes of July the 15th, 2020 workshop. Are there any questions, comments, corrections? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the July 15th, 2020 workshop?
Motion to approve them as submitted.
Got a first, second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, left hand for Faith. Thank you. That is unanimous. All right, the first item on the agenda tonight is there is a consideration for a potential ordinance amendment. Code is the Virginia thing. Ours is an ordinance. Amendment for the development of apartment buildings on R3 residential multifamily zone parcel. Everybody has, I'm sure, has read the information that Mr. Webb sent out on that. And it is good that we are getting somebody interested in that property for many reasons. Mr. Webb, would you like to elaborate on that?
Sure. I know that this has been something that has been talked about for several years. Even back a year ago, Mr. Weaver was here to remove the senior-only option from the, I guess, from the approved proffers. So we'll do a public hearing, and those existing conditions and proffers are being enacted with still in full force. I've had some experience with these type of projects in the past. And, you know, I think from the initial standpoint, the applications for these tax credits, the tax credits are through UHDA, Alcohol, Virginia Housing. These low-income housing tax credits started actually in 1986. It was a program called the Tax Reform Act of '86. So the federal government being involved in the construction or building of affordable housing, basically what they've done is provided credit for developers for the private market. Not all of them are for-profit developers. Some are nonprofit developers. This program basically helps to subsidize a project. So if you had just to say a $5 million housing project to build, you could receive up to, I don't know what the ratio is, let's just say you could get $2.5 million in credit. You could sell that credit, put it back into the project, and it makes the project, at least from a financial standpoint, feasible, even though you're not getting maybe the full market rate. You're actually getting a chunk of money in the tax credit. You get the credit, you can sell it on the open markets, syndicate markets. It's pretty interesting, but it's something like you have $1 of credit, you can sell it for 95 cents a dollar, something like that. So you almost get full value. And these credits are purchased by corporations, individuals to offset their tax, federal tax. So that's how that's worked. It's been a pretty successful program. I mean, I know I had a great aunt that did these projects that was tax credits or project in Roanoke for 25, 30 years. It was a nice housing development. She did pay her rent that was well below what we did. So that's the concept behind the project. The applications are due every March. And I've talked to a couple of you. This is when the application for the project, when the developer, in this case, it's this server, puts the application, and they not pretty much, they have to have all the approvals from the jurisdiction. They've got to have site plan or rezoning or whatever it requires for them to get their vision, their project approved. My experience has been with working with several of these projects. I've told several of you, if they came into my office if it was due in March, if they came in by January 1, we were usually ahead of schedule. So the fact that we've been in contact, at least for me, the last month, I think at least shows that they've got some thought, some ideas about this project, and obviously a pretty good track record. The site itself, it is by right, so in R3, I guess if you look at the little write-up, apartments in Madison, you know, it basically says you're limited to 8 dwellings per unit, and that's not unusual. Other smaller jurisdictions, sometimes 4, 8. Basically, you've got a garden apartment, where you've got 4 lower level, 4 upper level apartments. They see, this server sees an opportunity here. There's a need, and I think, you know, it just happens to also coincide with the housing study that was done by the regional commission, which I put a couple of bullet points out there. This application, as they review their pro forma, what it would take, you know, we talk about the word economies of scale. Basically, they know the demands there. The developer's comfortable that application will be approved, but the actual site itself, trying to develop that site, you know, with multiple 8 units, apartments, really, it's just not feasible. If you look at the site, there's some topography issues. So you're probably really looking at, you had to do multiple 8 unit dwellings, you might be looking at 3 or 4. So, maybe you get a density of 20 or so apartments. The cost of construction of those units just makes it really not really possible. They approached me, and I say they, Mr. Gentry, Mr. Weaver, and Mr. Serber, I've been talking to them. Would the county at least consider amending the ordinance to allow for maybe a change in the footprint of the buildings, also increase density, which would make the project feasible? My feeling about anyone who comes in and wants to request a change to the ordinance, I think it's something that, sure, I mean, you can always request it. Whether or not the commission or the board wants to leave things as it is and say, look, you can develop it by right and not have to come in here for site plan. Or we could amend the code to allow for this by right. Well, the option that I think is probably more preferred is simply amending R3 and adding the ability to have a higher density unit as a special use. So it would kind of be a lot like the last public hearing we had. Amending the code, providing the applicant with an opportunity to apply for a special use permit. As far as the site itself, things like traffic and all the other details that would probably need to be, will need to be addressed. That's something that we can potentially do at a later time. And even if we didn't change the code, under the site plan, regardless if someone wanted to do just the smaller footprints, they would still look at things like traffic. We do know there's a connection to Food Line parking lot that can get their access. Obviously, Mountain Courthouse Road would be a connection as well. When I've worked on these projects before, I'm a big believer that the design of the project is very important. I mean, if this was something that were to go forward, I told the applicant, they were kind of talking about one building. I sort of think the 2 building amendment concept would be, just to me, a better concept in the fact that I just think that one large building, for whatever reason, I'm just not a fan of it. I think 2 buildings with a site that's developed with green space, open space, potentially, a connection, walking connection to the Food Line, and the ability to drive as well. But those are things, obviously, that are too far ahead, but those things that can be looked at in a day. I think the main thing now is, do we want to proceed with the code amendment? If we do, we'll make it special use. Do you want to make it by right? With something of this size, I just sort of feel that it really should be special use, but that's just my feeling. Any questions? Or?
Yeah. I got a question. Height wall statement, however you want to take it. But here's a piece of property that's probably one of the few pieces of property that's zoned like this and has the sewer taps to be able to perform this project. And I am personally not a big fan of trying to fix everything with a special use permit. I think that here's an opportunity that is a piece of property zoned the way it should be. We make an amendment to the ordinance to fix the number of units that are going to be there. I just hate attaching special use permits to everything. I think it's a bad way to fix an ordinance. I think the ordinance should stand for itself, and we should fix the ordinance and not keep doing special use permits. That's my opinion. I think that's a bad way to fix the ordinance.
Mr. Kirkland?
I would agree with Pete on that. I'm not a fan of special use permits. Also, advocated it. If the special use permit goes with the property, doesn't go with the person getting the special use permit. Fought for that many times. And the situation with Kevin Good over there at Shelby was a good example of that. And also the situation with Clay at the livestock market was another good example of that. A special use permit, when given, should have gone with the property, not with the applicant. But I agree with Pete, this is a way to solve this issue without doing a special use permit.
Thank you. Mr. Work?
Megan, has Ms. Serber given you any indication what kind of density she's considering for this property?
My conversations is, if it's a two-building project, she would do 60, 30 per building.
Say that again.
If it were two units, two different buildings, she would, 60 number of units would be the preferred number. If it were one unit, it'd be 48.
60 aggregate?
Yes, 60 for, if it were two buildings, 60. If it's one building, 48. So up to 60.
So that's quite a change from
Right,
what's permitted.
the idea, if she does one building at 48 units, and that would probably leave ability to maybe do some other amenities on site that maybe she couldn't do with two buildings. So I think both options are good ones to consider. And if we get to the point where we will consider something, she could bring in visuals and maybe give the pluses and minuses of what a one building versus two buildings might provide her with flexibility to do or not do.
Couple more questions.
Sure.
As Chairman has pointed out in his written materials, we do have a provision in our comprehensive plan, I think it's goal 8, that focuses on the need for affordable housing. What has Ms. Server indicated to you that would persuade you that this will be affordable housing?
Well, part of the receiving the credit, and I think she's listening, and I think I'm pretty, if I'm not totally correct, I'm close. Part of receiving the credit, there's a 30-year sort of contract that I guess they have, I think it's HUD, that basically stipulates that this has to be rented at a below market value. And she gave me the numbers. The lowest rent would be $310, and it'd probably be for a one-bedroom unit. And then the highest possible rent, this is all based on the applicant's income, the highest possible rent would be $1,165. And I guess that may be for a 3-bedroom or whatnot. And of course, the type of, the number of bedrooms each unit has is going to really drive the occupancy as far as, if they're mostly one bedrooms, I could probably mostly, most likely scenario, you're going to have seniors. And the larger bedrooms would have families, but she said $310 to $1,165. But again, the contract that they signed with, I'm just saying HUD, I think that's who it is. It's a 30-year that this has to stay below market value and follow the regulations for
Knowing what you know about the demographics of the county, what is your sense today as to what would fulfill our desire to provide affordable housing in terms of rental rates?
We have subdivision ordinance, the 3-acre limit, you have, R1, R2. Traditionally, you think a developer comes in, subdivide property, maybe he builds single-family homes, maybe they do duplexes. As I see it where we are now, this is not just Madison, but I see the same thing in Page County. They're really, and that's why I put the data in. There really just aren't any rental units. And the ones that are available, I think I just looked at Zillow. You're looking at $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom. You probably have an average household income in Madison County, and this is generally 2 working people. You might be maybe in the mid-2000s for the county. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I know the age is somewhere around 40 something too. I don't think we're a lot different over here. So I've talked to people who own rental property here. They have multiple people want to rent immediately. You go online, you look on Craigslist, you look in the paper, you just don't see any rental property. Now, what will happen, I believe, with a project like this, is it's going to draw from the region. I mean, you might have an older person that lives in Orange that's looking for a more affordable unit that could move here. I mean, so it's going to have if it's 60 units or 48 units, it's going to draw from the region. But ultimately, I think there's just going to be people who live around here that just have a hard time finding housing.
I think, Mr. Chairman, my personal reaction is that this proposal for up to, you say 60?
Yes, sir.
Per structure, is so far beyond what is currently provided for, that it strikes me that this is more appropriate for a special use permit than changing the ordinance and simply lifting or eliminating altogether unit requirement.
I do think those are a good point, and Mr. Elliott brought this up. I mean, I agree with that point, but there is really no more water and sewer capacity at this level. I mean, this, more than anything, something preventing this going forward and being duplicated in the county because it just simply, there's no capacity for it. So to a certain degree, it's kind of a moot point because I don't think anyone would have developed this tendency, but yes, I agree with that.
And one more point, Mike, if I could. I think it would be helpful, Lincoln, if we could sort of lay out the future in terms of schedule for dealing with it. At this point, we don't have any kind of an application to begin acting upon. But we have considerable time, more than at least up to 7 months.
We're doing better than January.
So we can proceed in an orderly fashion and understand better what she wants and understand how we best try to accommodate it, because she is pursuing a goal that is a goal.
She does need to give us a timeline. I had talked to Ms. Suber about a timeline, and ideally, I mean, if this was to kind of, if we did move with public hearings and things like that, I mean, even with March being like 9 months, 7, 8 months away, whatever it is, still not a lot of wiggle room in the timeline. So we need to be fairly direct, but we do need to get a schedule part right. Yes,
When we're talking about 1 unit or 2 units, main building, how many stories are we talking about?
The visuals that were provided had 3 stories. And I would imagine that would probably be the case.
The density that's proposed, is it comparable to a housing unit here in Culpeper or Green or Orange?
I mean, it's 60 units is this would be the largest, as far as I know, housing density in the county for sure. It's something that is probably 60 units. The one that is being proposed in Luray that came a couple of years ago that they're moving forward with, I think that is 52 units. Luray's 5,000 people, just for example. So for Madison, I mean, this is a large, dense project. There's no question.
But compared to other counties, like surrounding counties?
Yeah. She has a list of all the
There's 2
projects.
in Orange that you could go look at, that she gave an address for.
Right.
Plus this building that you asked the question about is pictures that she sent is a 3-story building, and it has 48 homes, apartments, whatever you want to call them, in those. Except our ordinance only allows for one side, and this would be a 2-sided structure. And she showed it in the pictures.
So it's 60.
It would be 48 if it's a 2-sided structure. In this picture that she sent.
And we talked about 60 units.
Yeah.
Two-sided.
If it's 60 units, the thought is we do two structures. If it's,
3 stories or 4 stories?
I'm assuming it'd be 3 stories. If it's just one structure, then it would be, this is what she, I said ideally, be 48.
Dan?
Before I retired, I worked really hard on trying to get the senior housing, and it didn't happen. And everybody was really disappointed. So I'm really glad, and I know from my work about affordable housing, it just isn't here. And many of our elderly moved to Orange and Culpeper to take advantage of those. So some might want to come back to Madison, but just like Orange welcomed people from Madison into Heritage Hills, then we could expect people outside the county to come into Madison. But this is a really, really big change from 8 units to a building to 30 units to a building. And does she have any ideas on how they would be situated on this particular piece of land?
They've done some preliminary work, and I have seen it, but that's something that we could, if we get together next meeting, we would definitely have that visual. But they have, spatially with a landscape architect, I think, worked out where they could put the buildings. They've got a couple different options.
Would there be any access onto Courthouse Mountain Road?
Yes, I mean, definitely.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Elliott had a comment.
Mr. Elliott?
Well, I heard Mr. Work say, oh, we got plenty of time. Let me tell you about time. I've been here a long time. I watched one other time when this project tried to do exactly what Nan's talking about. You didn't have this board, you had another board. And guess what? They drugged their feet. And guess what? The people said, I'm sorry, you didn't get it done in time, we're gone. We're not interested. So don't talk about we got all this time, because I've seen what time did to this project one other time. One of the things you need to think about with putting these buildings in a single unit is you gotta have fire protection. So if you take and put 8 buildings all over the whole area, instead of having one road through the middle or one road behind it where the fire truck can run up and down, it's easy to protect it for fire. The other thing is if the buildings are 2 units instead of 8 units, then we got green area where she can put in some trails for the old people to walk, maybe walk the food line. She can put in some playground areas for kids that may be there and live there. So green space would be very important to this rather than all asphalt and buildings. And if you did that and you situate them right, I mean, I've done construction all my life and I could see where you could situate those houses there, where you could create some green space and have a travel area for fire department and have a place for people to walk the food line or maybe ride a golf cart or something. I don't know, but there's a lot of possibilities there. But when you start spreading out all the buildings, all the room's gone.
Right?
I was just gonna say, with hearing Nan talk about senior housing, which I know is very critical here. And I know I work with clients at our nonprofit that often needs housing and rents one room in some place because that's all they have. But I'm thinking also of your I say younger than senior, my son, for instance, who rents in the county, or I think a rather large sum of money for what he gets, no utilities, no nothing. Whether or not he wants to or not, I don't know. But I mean, young, like good working, hardworking people that are not partiers, that are not, maybe with one child or something at this point. We have a lot of low income families, young families. We're not eliminating them, are we, in this unit?
Oh, no.
Right, so, I mean, that is, I know that can be an issue, but rental is rental, and I just want to see something happening, but I do agree with Pete. Now, we're not talking about a bunch of houses that are, or 2-unit houses, we're talking about 2 structures if we live with the 60.
Right. Type building.
Yes, like we see in the pictures, yes.
And I don't think anybody here opposes the project. It's just on how it's going to proceed. Mr. Kreger.
I also was here during the time where you thought you had plenty of time. Like Pete said, people got fed up with it, just pulled out, nothing happened. And also, I've been in construction all my life, just like Pete. And it's a whole lot cheaper to go up than it is to go out. So you might consider a 3-story building as opposed to spreading it out further on the site. It would give you more green space and more trailers and more opportunities for other things other than field.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher's up next.
Okay. Was something scaring you, daylight over Pete starts talking about time. Who was notified about this meeting? Any property next door we got? Nobody? Yeah, this right now is a work session, so. Well, I think the quicker we get them in here so they don't start screaming what I'm so sick of hearing, that they don't know anything about this. This is quick on the draw. I think that we should have the public, if they want to come, go by that thing, they should be notified for the next meeting. That's with Gracie and Chuck, you got this? Okay. Okay, the other thing is that
Orange County now.
I like to, just to say 600 square feet, which isn't very big, behind rangeland, which is in Greene County, goes for $1,100 a month. So I'd also like to know, what is a low-income person? And who controls that? And Nan probably helped me on that, but I think everybody should know that. And we, all of a sudden, we was talking about old folks. Faye says there's a lot of young folks that fit this possible. So this is not gonna be an old folks.
I hope not.
So I mean, I've heard old folks 3 times tonight, is why I'm clarifying that. And,
What's your definition of old folks?
old folks, well, I'm one of them, but anyway. And I think that one of the first things that need to, I know I'm loud, but that's okay. Maybe they can hear me on Courthouse Mountain. One of the first things that need to be addressed here is that the applicant needs to tell us 1 or 2 buildings. I don't think we should be choosing it. Should we?
Oh, no, I think what we're addressing is, do we want to change the ordinance or do we want to do a special use permit?
Right. I mean, ultimately, they will propose what's in their best interest. And I am with Pete on where that should go. After seeing the special use permit process. So, I guess it ended. I won't go there, but somebody will tell me I'm talking to them. Anyway. And is there any way we control the number of Madison County residents that live in it? We can't do that?
I wouldn't think so.
Well, I mean,
I don't think so.
okay, but I mean, that's a good thought, isn't it?
That would be,
Oh, yeah.
And we're building it for us, we don't want all of Orange to come over here and jump in.
probably be discriminating.
When, if you go into Orange on Route 28, right there and start Praise Funeral Home, I believe she built that, didn't she? It's a very well-run, low-income housing unit right there, right next to Praise Funeral Home. And I think the police will tell you they don't have a lot of trouble. So I have all kinds of other questions. I've talked to Patrick over at the Rappahannock Rapidan Planning today about some things. I thought there was a project to run a sidewalk out there to Food Line. I was wrong, that was the town. But I'll leave that, a lot of my questions are either for the site plan or later. Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter.
More of a question. In the ordinance already, it's not real specific, but it makes an exception for housing for older persons. Undefined, just older persons. Of 60.
That's right.
Do they give you any idea of what mix they're talking about here? We don't have any idea of really what clientele they're having except for their income.
Right,
Is it all 3 bedrooms?
right, and I think that's,
Bedrooms?
right.
We don't have any information.
I know Jen is watching, so these are good comments that we can, because the plan is that she would come in the next meeting.
The ordinance also doesn't specify if housing for older people has to be only for older. Doesn't say it like that. So it's a little vague there.
That's right. I agree.
That can be addressed at the same time we start looking at the shape of the ordinance. But it's an option.
That's right.
They don't, I think that was when they were talking about the original idea. How it would go.
Right.
Thank you.
When it was the 60, it was thinking that the majority of them would be 1-bedroom apartments. So you'd have more apartments because you could get more.
Most likely, right?
We don't know that. A lot of them.
Yeah, we don't really have much.
Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Webb, I'm assuming that if the zoning ordinance is changed, the proffers that was set forth on the Seminole Ridge proffer statement back in 2018, the applicant would not be required to undertake any of those improvements, correct?
Well, actually, I have the opposite.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm asking. I haven't researched it.
I would say that in the owner, Mr. Weaver, has indicated, and Mr. Gentry is working with them, have indicated that these proffers would remain in effect.
If they did not, the zoning that was applied to it at that time would not apply. It only applies to the R3 coast of those properties.
That's right.
And my concern, and again, I don't know the answer to this sitting here. I haven't researched this at all. But are we really talking about a conditional rezoning here? Or, I mean, you've indicated that there is exactly one property in Madison County to which this would apply. If we do this as a conditional rezoning, we can in fact accept proffers from the applicant provided they are voluntary. And I understand Mr. Webb to be saying that the applicant would in fact be making this identical proffers that are in the Seminole Ridge proffer statement. Is that accurate?
So the land is currently zoned R3 with conditions. And I thought about this. So as it stands now, they wouldn't be able to do the 48 or 60. They could do the 60 if they were going. They could do it if they wanted to limit it to seniors only. So in order to make this work, in order to give them an opportunity, we need to amend the code and not add this special use. I'm just repeating what we said. But still, if we amend the code, I believe the previous proffers from 2019 run with the land. I mean, it's, this server would have to follow those. And now I've read them, I don't think there's an issue or anything in those proffers that was problematic. I think that, that's, but if we make it a special use, the site still has proffers on it. So I still think those proffers will have to adhere to, which again doesn't follow, but the special use permit would be to have a higher density. Does that, everybody follow? I mean, I don't know.
But if you use a special use to do this, to where they can put that number in the building, you're doing the same thing you do if you rezone it.
With the one exception being, what are they on the hook for?
We're not talking really about rezoning though. We talk about making a change in it to where they can use more buildings, not rezoning the property. Make an amendment to the zoning,
To allow them to do what they're offering.
to allow them to put more buildings in a unit. We're not rezoning the property. The profits can still stand with it.
That's
You're
right.
not rezoning the property. All you're doing is making an amendment to the ordinance to be able to put more units in a building.
Whether that be by right or by special use.
But if you, again, if you use special use, you're accomplishing the same thing as you are doing by changing the amendment in the ordinance. Either way, you're getting to the same thing.
I agree, yep.
Right now, they can do this by right, but subject to certain conditions, which you're proposing. We wait, or we change the ordinance that they do not apply.
Right now, what they can do by right is what is, highlighted. They can do the 8 per building, or they could do the 160 or maybe 148 or 2, but it would have to be exclusively seniors. And like Mr. Carpenter said, it's a little vague. Can you do 60 units with any multiple family dwelling, so they include with any? So I think it's a little vague. I guess at the end of the day, proper stay, they have to follow them. Doesn't seem to be an issue. Do we do it by amending the code, or do we do it by special use? My preference for special use, and it can be accomplished by amending the code, is to give them, they will have, the adjacent property owners will have their say when you amend the code, and they'll have their say when if they would come back for a special use from it either way.
If we amend the code, would it mean that any R3 zone area would have an allowance of 60 units?
But whatever, if we were amended and to allow for higher density, yes, that would extend to every R3, that's correct.
So are there other places in the county?
I don't think there's a lot of R3, and like Mr. Said, there's no water and sewer capacity for that, so it kind of eliminates it, but it does, we don't, in the future, could that change? Could there be more capacity? Yes, it could, so it's a good point. Yes, Ms. Miller.
I was just checking, I'm thinking there might be a piece of property, it has some sewer units, but I don't know how many, and I was just trying to check on that.
Well, I think you're thinking about down here.
On 29?
Yeah, I think it's got 12. You say you're amending the code, you're referring to the ordinance.
Yeah, the code and ordinance, yeah, code and
They're
ordinance.
two different things.
I use it interchangeably, or the ordinance.
I'm assuming he means the local ordinance. So,
Well, my question was, did the proffers go with this, and was she willing to accept those, and I think that's been answered.
Yeah, she definitely.
The other thing I have, and which I think would be answered, is I really don't know what the size of these buildings or structures are that she's proposing, and how much of the 8 acres it would take up. So I would want to know myself, what size are these particular buildings that she's proposing? I cannot tell, and it hasn't been offered, we don't have any information on that. But I think we need more particulars. And the other thing is on the proposal here, there's other things in there that apply to these things other than 731, 732, and 733. Or back to the ordinance that we would have to look at, that would apply in this situation. So we might, and we will, of course, it sounds like we're going to take a little in-depth look at all of this. But, yeah, I would like to know specifics. If she's going to do 2 buildings, which it sounds like to me, what size those buildings are going to be square footage wise, because we have to take into consideration all the parking and so forth. I don't think that we can eliminate all those requirements.
All the parking requirements and all that are on the site plan.
Is it possible to get a conceptual drawing of what the 2 buildings would look like on the top?
Well, yeah.
Great to have.
What I wanted to do is, again, there's not a rush, but there is definitely a timeline that we kind of need to be, I think aware of. Ideally, the server would come on the 2nd, which we don't have any public hearing scheduled, and bring her presentation, visuals, should be here to talk to you, and maybe, with the board of supervisors all in the same room, then maybe there can be a consensus of, one, understanding more about, particulars from her perspective, And also maybe try and get some consensus, what's the best way to move forward, with amending the code, or amending the ordinance, whether it's amending it by right or adding it by special use. But I think that this, and I've told her, she lives in Bristol, so that's 5.5 hours away. So I want to kind of have an initial conversation tonight and then get her in, Mr. Weaver and whatnot on the second. We can kind of sit down and really have her explain everything.
Well, we need more specifics.
Right.
Springer?
I just want, I'm 100% in favor of this project. Just a few particulars we've got to work out. It's desperately needed in the county. Finally, somebody's come around and is willing to do it. We've had people that wanted to develop this property before, like you said, just drug their feet. I'm talking about I'm talking about the current board at that time. People finally got tired of it and said, the hell with it, we're going somewhere else. And I don't want to see that happen in this occasion.
Mike, one of the things that I'll just mention, in, of course, it's the planning commission, but what would it hurt to have a committee start looking at how we would reword the ordinance or what we would do, and maybe Lincoln's got an idea of how we would do it to fix it. So if we decide this is the way we go, then we don't take another month to say, well, we're going to form a committee and we'll do this, keep going on. If we've got something generally in mind or we're working on something, then we would have something we can start talking about what we can do. I know there's a lot of particulars, but there's only so many ways you can amend that ordinance or fix that ordinance. So if we look at how we could do that, maybe that would give us a head start.
If we're not careful in amending ordinance, we can end up more complex than we have already. And just that amendment to change the rural resort ordinance to the event venue, if you read through that, there's other things that should have been changed at the same time and were not. So we got to be careful here not to create additional conflicts within the ordinance. There's enough of them already. Mr. Elliott's suggestion that we form a committee, I'm all for that, and I think it would help move things along a little bit quicker. If the board is in agreement with that, we can do that.
I'd like to take a Saturday. I think back to Pete. We do have time to proceed in an orderly fashion. What I would propose is that Lincoln go back to the server, tell her that the planning commission unanimously in favor of this project, and get her to at least provide us an outline of what she wants to do, and then we can decide how best to do it consistent with the county's interest. And I think that if she comes into our next workshop and actually presents her proposal on paper in advance of the next workshop, so we could all be prepared to react to it, that is the orderly way to do it. Decide where to go from there. I don't think the idea of setting up a committee at this point is the best way to go, only because we don't have a proposal in front of us of any kind. She doesn't have to have a detailed proposal, but we'd like to know what she wants to do.
The detail I would like to see is if she's going to do 2 buildings, what's the square footage of the buildings, and then we can start from there.
And they were willing to give
And if we can get this information before the joint meeting coming up, then we can move this project along with that.
They were willing to give me that tonight, and I just said, let me start with this, and then we'll.
Suits?
My thoughts are the same as far as that goes. We seem to lose a lot of time between when our workshop is and we discuss things, then our other folks don't know, the ones that will really make the final decision, they haven't heard it yet, and Clay does his best, I'm sure, as Mr. Chairman, to get the information back, but if they're here, they hear it. Is it inappropriate? I mean, do you have time on the next joint meeting to discuss this if we have our information. So we have input. Maybe they don't, maybe the board, BOS doesn't even want to consider anything but special use. I don't have a clue. So, you know what I'm saying? And that would stop it right there.
That's why I
So
said we
I
could wait
think-
on the board, decide if they want us to have a committee or whether they want Mr. Webb to handle his own on his own.
So can it be brought up at the next meeting if we have the information, the joint meeting?
Let's talk about timeline. So our next workshop is in September, okay? So in September, we do something in our workshop, and then once we do something and we say, okay, now we'll form a committee, we'll do this. So we come back and it's October. Now we've got something ready in October, and Sean says, okay, I need to advertise it. So now we can't advertise it, we can't do it until November. So here's November, and here's December, and now the lady's ready to go, and guess what? We're still dragging her feet.
That's
And
why-
she's gone.
That's why I'm suggesting that we can get the specifics for the joint meeting, whether
They
we
don't
have
understand
next,
that.
then we can try to get this
So
thing.
I think what I'm hearing is we'll do the joint meeting. The server will come, which she's intending to come up from Bristol. She will come tonight, but as I said, right now, we'll have, she'll come in a second and she'll give us a presentation, any clarification from her. Hopefully, after the second, we can also maybe have at least the planning commission, a recommendation for the board, how we'd like to, how at least the planning commission would like to move forward, whether it be amending the code or adding a special use. So I think it's pretty clear. And then in the meantime, like I said, they were willing to provide me with almost everything. As I said, just give me the narrative, let me write something up, kind of lay the groundwork. Then the second will be your opportunity to come here and kind of give us your pitch. So does that sound?
I mean, you all have a general gist of what this lady in this development group wants to do. Why would we not go ahead and form the committee and start getting that process in place to do the change in the ordinance? So that we have a group that's well versed on it. And then we do the joint meeting, we listen to her pitch, and then we have everything kind of ducks in a row so we can get the advertisements like moving forward. I mean, I hate to speak for the board, but I think that will expedite the process.
Yeah, well, that's why
Please,
we'll go back, we just need some guidelines here on how to go.
let's do a committee, get a committee going, let's go.
All right, we will do a committee and we will come up with some recommendations on how to proceed with amending the ordinance to try to move this thing along.
I would like one quick thing. The process of this, we do the committee, at least the committee and this planning commission gets to state what we want to do before the board of supervisors tells us what they want us to do. The difference is I sort of feel like I waste my time if they don't tell us what to do anyway. I mean, that's happened before. In this process, I would like it not to happen. So we would have a 1, 2, 3. I don't mind the board being here. I mean, it's a joint meeting, so they're gonna be here anyway. What I mind doesn't make any difference, but we get to say what the committee and the planning commission gets to state what we recommend to the board of supervisors. Then they can do what they want to do with their recommendation. Not some, all of a sudden during the first part of the meeting, we are told that this is what they want. I hope you understood that. I
did. They,
I agree, I don't think that. We always take a recommendation from you all. A little bit of direction every now and then. I hope we think of it as constructive, but we're always taking a recommendation. No matter what, no matter if we decide to go with it or decide to go against it, which is exceedingly rare that we go against.
But okay, not to get in an argument, and I very limited what I can say on the last special use permit.
I wouldn't say anything else.
Well, what I will say this about that was the process wasn't exactly done correctly. The board sort of stated what they wanted,
And I was wondering what the planning commission was doing, still hackling over it. Thank you.
Okay, as far as a committee meeting, we have to give at least 3 days' notice, and Board of Supervisors meeting is next week on the 25th, if I'm not mistaken, at 7 p.m. That does not really give us enough time, I don't think.
No.
We've got a week we missed a week. I think.
We're talking about doing this meeting on the
September.
September 2nd,
Yeah.
Okay,
the joint meeting.
all right, so we have time next week to have a committee meeting,
Do it in the later afternoon, something like that.
to get our thoughts together. Okay.
Does this initially work, assume that we are amending the ordinance rather than going with a special use permit?
There is no tight guidelines here, we will do what everybody has to say, what everybody has to recommend, and we'll go from there.
And it can be presented to the full planning commission on the second.
Okay. I will write up a committee, I will send that out, anybody and everybody, and it sounds like everybody wants to participate in the committee meeting, and that is great. So, there'll be 9 members in that committee.
Especially
That's good.
if you get all the information. If she's got everything ready to send it, the sooner you can get it out and distribute it to us.
Okay, well, maybe we can even get it done virtually. I mean, that's what.
Well, I think if we just got, she said she had everything ready to do that. If we see what she's got, we can start working with that. Okay.
Do you have more specifics now, which you could share that she's already given you?
They just, the architect just showed me I didn't include tonight, but just a sketch of the site, sort of how it would lay out.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, we can look at it next week.
Well, we need it for a committee meeting.
Right, we'll look at it next week.
I'd like to hear from her too, how many projected, what would be the population if it was 60 or 48? You think it would be 2 people per unit, 5 people, or whatever, what the expectation?
So do you want to pick a time next week or a day?
Wait till we have our committee.
Look at my calendar. Well, let's say Tuesday the 25th. Does that give everybody enough time?
All right.
What time?
4 p.m.
All right, that's, the Board of Supervisors meets that night.
The 25th?
Yes. I have it in my book, right? 6 p.m.
You're gonna have a whole planning commission meeting, you have to advertise that for it, Sean.
Yes, it needs to be.
You not all of us show up.
Right.
Well, you can't have more than
That's
3
correct.
show up.
Is 3 the number?
Yes.
Three's the number.
The number.
So it doesn't matter, we have to advertise it.
We'll put it on the website. I'll put it on the website.
3 days.
tomorrow.
The Tuesday, the 25th, that's 4, did you say?
At 6.
Is there a Board of Supervisors next week meeting on the 25th?
Yes.
Okay.
What time?
So we'll be discussing it then, but as far as the committee meeting, we will not be able to have another committee meeting on this issue because of the time frame. The earliest will be on Wednesday, the 26th. So that'll be 2 meetings in a row for the planning commission.
No.
No, we don't have
This
to
is a
come on the
workshop.
25th.
I mean, this is us, planning,
We don't
the
come
Board of
to the 25th.
Supervisors, a regular meeting, if they're not gonna discuss this item, it's not gonna be on the agenda. They're not gonna discuss this until the second. That's when our joint is.
Okay.
I propose the 24th. Is that 3 days?
It doesn't give us enough time to get a notice out tomorrow.
But when will it go on top of the 25th?
Not,
Yeah, they meet at 6. I mean, we just have to,
The posting is simple. Put it on the
That's
website,
right.
put it on the door, a couple other locations, and done.
3 working days.
I mean, that's it. I mean, this is simple.
we can do Monday, I just prefer an afternoon.
But Monday won't give you 3 full working
That
days.
is correct.
I can go.
And I've already been
I can go
reprimanded
on the
over that.
Yes, you have. All right. Tuesday, the 25th. Those meeting, 6 o'clock.
That is correct.
So 4 o'clock is too early for you?
Yeah, I can't do.
Can you do?
I cannot.
They're gonna ask you how to advertise next.
Okay. Anybody else can make 4 o'clock or want to be here?
I got a problem.
Wait a minute. The planning commission bylaw, so you gotta have at least 3 members. Just I hear somebody say there's a limit on the number of people that can attend.
How to
No.
advertise.
If you have more than 2,
Three or more.
Okay, so we're good.
More than 2, advertise.
Okay.
And advertising would be putting a notice on the front of the building,
Yes.
put it on the website.
I understand all that.
That's all you need, and the topic.
It's a public
That's the
hearing.
topic.
Four-
That's it.
4 PM, there will be a committee meeting on this issue.
Monday, Tuesday?
Tuesday the 25th?
Thursday the 25th.
And the committee is like,
What?
Here,
You gotta, if you do it here, you start at 4, you've got about an hour. 5, you start.
Well, there's only go at 3 o'clock.
Well, could you do it at 1?
mm-mm.
I don't want to do this without Nan Coppage because of her.
How about, gentlemen, how about 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock on the 25th. All good with that? Okay, 1 PM. We'll post that notice. Spread, will take care of that? Thank you very much.
And we're here.
And it'll be
Are we
right
gonna
here.
plan anything virtual? We won't need to, right?
Yeah. Beat it up there. Gentlemen? Okay. Any other comments on this issue? Not, we all clear on the meeting next Tuesday, 1 PM? All right. At this time, we need an update on the last Board of Supervisor meeting from one of our representatives that was in attendance. Peter, you were not there, is that correct?
I was not there. I
Okay.
didn't realize that I was there.
Okay. Everybody does have that list. If they don't, let me know. Mr. Fisher, you were there. Would you like to give us some particulars on what happened at that meeting?
Well, the biggest thing was public hearing. We're spending a huge amount of money for the FY 21 budget amendment is what it's called, was CARES Act transfer, and they went down every item, and it was a very long meeting. I will tell you that what I told them was that we were gonna talk about solar, and hopefully we'll do that tonight. The only, it really was money and putting it in the right hole, and I would have to say that there was some suggestions to spend CARES money over spending Madison County money, which was a difference. I don't know exactly what the word, but
Restricted funds on CARES.
yes.
Public funds that are generated by local tax revenue are not restricted, so we'd rather spend restricted funds before it's unrestricted.
I learned a lot about small items but they really mount up real quick. And that was basically it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I would like to, it seems to me, or at least there is some confusion to me, because I thought every meeting that we had was a public meeting.
It is. It is. If it's more than 3, if it's 3 or
There's a
more.
difference between public meeting and public hearing.
That's correct.
There's a difference between the public hearing and the public meeting.
Yes.
Correct. Public hearings are defined in scope based on whatever the advertisement is in terms of what is going to be discussed. For example, if it's a rezoning or something where there is a statutory requirement as opposed to an ordinance requirement, if there's a statutory requirement that we have a public hearing, we are bound by those. Public comments at public meetings are not restricted because people can say whatever they want at during the public comment stage, but a public hearing is related to a specific issue that you were taking up.
Okay, so that's the defining thing, is a specific issue. Even though we put out there on their webpage that we were going to discuss subject tonight, for example, that was out there as a specific item. Okay. And
But remember, you're not taking a vote tonight.
no, we're not.
And the public hearing is a requirement before you take a specific vote on that particular issue.
I just want to get that clear in my mind.
They have.
No, I was just gonna say, public hearing too, you advertise it differently. There's a whole bunch of ramifications or specifications, I guess you'd say, on that versus our regular meetings and what we publish, and we do publish it on the website, what we're gonna be talking about. But the public hearing is much more, we pay for those. Here, well, we do, but 2 weeks to require 2 weeks and all that.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much for clarifying that for me. Next item on the agenda is our bylaws. We have been discussing changes to our bylaws now for a couple of months, and we haven't gotten together to finalize those. There's a couple other items that have to be considered also, but that'll have to be later on, because we haven't provided a proper announcement to the planning commission on those, and that was the one where we're going to talk about reading all the letters into the record during a meeting. And the other one is whether we wanted to restrict people from addressing the meetings that are only from Madison County residents. But we cannot take any kind of vote on that until we have our next workshop meeting, because we haven't probably been announced. So, and
Mr. Chairman,
and what, you had two other issues you wanted to add to that.
no, I have one more amendment to the bylaw. And
Is that the existing ones that we're working on, or is that just these two issues?
One is dealing with number C.
What?
Here, C. ABC,
Okay.
and the other one would be D.
Okay, all right, then we will, Mr. Chairman, really,
Order. You can, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, you can add anything you want to the agenda and discuss it. You don't have to put it out beforehand and make it an agenda item, you can discuss it, correct?
That is correct. If you add it, but again,
bylaws,
but remember, you cannot vote on anything tonight anyway.
no, not on these two issues. No. We can vote on the other items we have discussed on those of the planning commission.
This is a work session as opposed to a meeting.
You can't vote on anything tonight.
No,
We can't even vote on our own planning commission bylaws, or
Well, you might be correct about that.
I think we can.
That's, I think
that's our own
I
document.
think you're okay on bylaws, but. Yeah, you're correct. Stand corrected.
Are you going to look it up, Sean?
No, I'm not. You can talk about these two things, but you can talk about anything you add to the agenda.
Can we discuss it so that we're ready to vote for next time?
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's take what you've given us first.
Well, right. We will come back to that, and understand exactly where you're coming from, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. On the other thing is Steve Carpenter, gentlemen. The other thing that Steve Carpenter wrote up several weeks ago, and we talked about every one of them, and we had a consensus on these amendments. I passed out what would be considered a final version of amendments to our bylaws, okay? And I emailed, texted a copy of that to everybody. Okay. We need to go over each one of them again. We can do that. It's pretty clear. There's nothing substantive in here other than the thing about,
Mr. Moscow, I stand corrected. When it comes to just your internal governance, you can in fact raise that tonight. Okay. Sorry about that.
okay.
I don't want y'all to get locked up.
We appreciate it.
Okay. We added two specific things in here that Sean has suggested.
Is there another copy of those up there anywhere? Okay.
Which is in Article 6. Specifically, six -8, 6-9. Two significant changes. And I will read these out, and we've already discussed them. This is according to the Virginia State Code. This is not something that we can change or reword or any of that stuff. 6-8, during times of local, state, and national emergency, the planning commission may conduct its meetings through, can everybody hear me? Electronic communications when meeting in person is unsafe or impractical. Virginia Code 2.2-3708.2. Okay. 6-9, planning commission may conduct any meeting in which the public business is discussed or transacted through electronic communications if, on or before the day of the meeting, a member of the planning commission notifies the chairman of the planning commission that they are unable to attend the meeting for any of the following reasons. A, due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical conditions that prevent that member's personal attendance